On this Sunday night, not good enough. Donald Trump suggests Canada's action on border security isn't sufficient to avoid U.S. tariffs, as the taunts from the White House keep coming.
I think the Canadian people many of them would love to join the United States with no tariffs, with lower taxes.
While the Prime Minister meets in Europe to shore up trade links with other allies. Plus, what Trump's tariff threat could mean for mortgage rates in Canada.
And if they drop rates too quickly, then it kind of causes quite a bit of panic.
Excess baggage, the new fee a major Canadian airline is charging for some flights. We'll unpack what it means for travelers. And sticky fingers. Thieves in Montreal make off with over $1 million worth of olive oil. Plus,
I thought about making something that would cheer people up.
From Canada's strong bagels to boycotting the Super Bowl. After a tumultuous week, Canadian businesses bite back.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin with breaking news. Donald Trump says he is planning to introduce a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports, including those from Canada. The details are expected in a formal announcement tomorrow. Last week, the president suspended 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports, at least until next month, after Canada announced measures to improve border security. But Trump said today that Canada still needs to do more to avoid a total trade war.
If we stop doing that, if we stop allowing them to make cars through tariffs and other things, cars, trucks, etc., what they make, they're not viable as a country.
Trump's latest tariff threats are dominating discussion in France, where Canada's Prime Minister is meeting with European leaders for a summit on artificial intelligence. Trudeau hoping to use what could be his last overseas trip as Prime Minister to strengthen ties with allies across the pond. Mackenzie Gray is traveling with the Prime Minister. Mackenzie.
Justin Trudeau is supposed to be here in Paris to talk about AI, Jeff, but Donald Trump blew that up when he announced a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports.
What countries will those go on?
Everybody. Steel.
Including Canada and Mexico?
Yeah. Any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
So much for a 30-day reprieve. The U.S. president threatening a key part of the Canadian economy, just days after Trump backed down from a blanket 25% tariff. The U.S. is heavily reliant on Canadian aluminum, with it representing 75% of its imports, and nearly 20% of its steel imports come from Canada, worth billions to the Canadian economy. Arriving at his hotel just before midnight Paris time,
Are you going to retaliate?
Justin Trudeau did not take any questions from reporters on if Canada would retaliate. But a senior Canadian government source told Global News they're waiting for something in writing or an official statement from the administration before they respond, pointing out Trump has previously blown through tariff deadlines.
Think of how beautiful that country would be without that artificial line running right through it.
The president also continuing his fixation on annexing Canada.
If they became our 51st state, it would be the greatest thing they could ever do. It would be unbelievable. It would be a cherished state. And think of how beautiful that country would be.
But this time he went further and darker than he has before, calling into question defending an attack on Canada, the bedrock of the NATO alliance.
You know, they don't pay very much for military, and the reason they don't pay much is they assume that we're going to protect them. That's not an assumption they can make, because why are we protecting another country?
Canada was in the same position back in 2018. The Trump administration had levied steel and aluminum tariffs, but they were able to get an exemption. And Justin Trudeau will look to do the same thing tomorrow if he bumps into U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. Both men will be attending an AI summit here in Paris. Jeff?
Mackenzie Gray covering the Prime Minister in Paris. Thanks, Mac. President Trump arrived tonight in New Orleans, becoming the first sitting president to attend the Super Bowl. A massive security operation is now underway with Trump's attendance and in the wake of last month's deadly terrorist attack in that city, which happened just blocks from the stadium. Police and Secret Service agents have shut down main streets and set up multiple checkpoints. Trump's national security advisor says a team is heading to Europe for high-level talks on Ukraine. Top U.S. officials will speak with EU leaders about how to end Russia's war. And Trump himself may meet with the Ukrainian president this week. As Candice Cole reports, Trump says he has a plan to end the conflict.
En route to New Orleans for the Super Bowl, U.S. President Donald Trump spoke to reporters about bringing the Russia-Ukraine war to an end.
I do believe we're making progress. We want to stop the Ukraine-Russia war, and I want to stop it just because I hate to see all these young people being killed.
This comes after Trump told the New York Post Friday that he spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin over the phone in an effort to negotiate peace talks. He didn't say when the conversation took place, but said Putin, quote, wants to see people stop dying. During his meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister, Trump said he will probably meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky this week. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz says Trump is ready to take action against Russia.
He is prepared to tax, to tariff, to sanction. We need to get all sides of the table and end this war.
Trump has repeatedly boasted that he will end Russia's war with Ukraine. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. As Trump pushes for a ceasefire, Russia reported taking control of Toretsk, a mining town in East Ukraine, and Ukraine has launched attacks in Russia's Kursk region in the south, a move Ukraine hopes to use as a bargaining chip for peace. Zelensky told reporters last week that he's willing to make a deal with Trump, trading rare earths like titanium and uranium for guaranteed security from the U.S. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is set to meet with President Zelensky later this week during the Munich Security Conference. Jeff?
Candice Cole in Washington. Thanks, Candice. The Greater Toronto Area is digging out of more than 15 centimeters of snow, the city's largest single-day snowfall in almost 2 years. More than 50 bus stops were closed and 150 flights disrupted at Pearson International Airport. Weather advisories have now been lifted in the GTA, but other parts of the South and Midwest Ontario are now under snow squall warnings. Some areas could see up to 50 centimeters of snow tonight. Another Canadian airline is asking some passengers to pay more. Air Transat is ending free carry-on bags for its cheaper fares. It means customers will need to pay extra to bring anything bigger than a purse or a backpack. As Dan Spector reports, the move is part of an industry trend.
The sound of luggage wheels rolling through Montreal Trudeau Airport may as well be the sound of a cash register. Following in the footsteps of Air Canada, WestJet, and others, Air Transat has decided bringing carry-on luggage onto the plane will no longer be included in your airfare when you're flying domestically, to sun destinations, or to the United States on an eco-budget or eco-standard ticket.
I think that sucks. I think they should offer free carry-ons. It's terrible, of course.
I feel really sad for us. It's not nice.
As of February 11th, booking a cheaper fare means you'll need to pay up to $50 plus tax to stow a piece of luggage in the overhead compartment. The only thing that won't cost extra is a purse or backpack.
We're going to end up paying for a backpack at some point, right?
Only flights to Europe, Peru, and Morocco, as well as Transat all-inclusive packages, are unaffected by the change.
In a statement to Global News, Transat said these changes are intended to offer more competitive base fares, align with current industry practices, and allow travelers to pay only for the services they truly need.
Who goes to Barbados or Jamaica or Cuba with just a purse or a knapsack? Nobody. So this is just, to me, a cash grab.
Now, all major Canadian carriers charge for carry-on bags.
For us traveling with kids, it makes sense to have the free carry-ons to bring stuff and items that the kids might need in flight.
After Air Canada announced it would cut free carry-on in December, airline executives were grilled by lawmakers at the House of Commons.
I'm talking. Shut your mic off.
But the change still came into effect in January. Graddick says on-time performance at Canadian Airlines is among the worst in the world.
The carriers shrug their shoulders and say, so what? Passengers are still flying with us, so who cares about on-time performance? Who cares about these fees?
He only wonders what new fee the airlines will clear for takeoff next. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.
Police in Quebec are looking for some slippery thieves who made off with more than $1 million worth of olive oil. A trucking company was hired to deliver more than 100 pallets of the pricey product earlier this month. That company transferred the goods to a second firm in Montreal, which was then supposed to ship them to Ontario, but that shipment never arrived. It's unclear how the olive oil was stolen, and so far no arrests have been made. All the tariff talk from the White House is fueling financial uncertainty here in Canada, and the threat of a trade war has also rattled Canada's housing market. And Gaviola reports on what it could mean for mortgage rates.
I would love to see Canada be the 51st state.
A war of words came to a head as Canada threatened retaliatory tariffs. On Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump issued a 30-day tariff pause for the two countries to negotiate. A trade war averted for now, but investors are still rattled.
We went back and we looked at 4 different instances where there were tariff threats in Trump's last presidency. We looked at what happened to all different markets, including Canada and Mexico. Actually, the market that got hurt the worst was the U.S.
Fear and uncertainty caused 5-year Government of Canada bond yields to plunge Monday, though they recovered somewhat. That's a key benchmark for popular 5-year fixed mortgages. That initial drop prompted some small lenders to lower fixed rates by a small amount.
That's 0.05% to 0.1% on fixed rates specifically.
But not enough to prompt Canada's big banks to lower their fixed rates yet.
And if they drop rates too quickly, then it kind of causes quite a bit of panic, potentially, with a lot of the mortgage clients in the pipeline that have not closed those deals yet.
If you're keeping an eye on the mortgage market for a renewal or first-time home purchase, you may be wondering what this uncertainty means for variable rates. They're impacted by the Bank of Canada's benchmark rate, and that's widely expected to be cut again in March.
Most likely by 0.25%. Hard to say how many more decreases the Bank of Canada will implement for the remainder of the year.
There are a lot of unknowns.
There's definitely renewed interest in the variable rate mortgage right now.
Your best bet? Consult a mortgage specialist who can walk you through options based on your risk tolerance, financial cushion, and job security. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Up next, freezing U.S. foreign aid.
This is just absolutely murderous.
The deadly consequences for people living with HIV. Israeli forces have withdrawn from a key corridor in central Gaza, a condition of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Large numbers of Palestinians started moving along the main road connecting the strip's north and south. The withdrawal comes a day after Hamas and Israel conducted their 5th hostage prisoner swap. Israel's shock at the condition of the 3 freed hostages is adding pressure onto Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, to extend the truce and bring more hostages home. 5 Thai hostages released from Hamas captivity were also returned home. They arrived back in Bangkok today, embraced by family members at the airport. The men were freed as part of that same ceasefire deal. Thailand's foreign ministry says that 1 Thai national is still being held by Hamas. A Canadian charity that supports people living with HIV/AIDS is issuing an emergency appeal tonight. This follows the sudden freeze in funding from USAID, a major American humanitarian group that the Trump administration now wants to dismantle. As Heather Yerkes West reports, aid workers say the move is putting millions of lives at risk.
In Nigeria and across the continent, there is panic and fear that life-saving HIV/AIDS programs will suddenly go away.
We're seeing a lot of disruption of delivery of treatment services, especially at the community level.
When the new U.S. president took office last month, he put a 90-day pause on all foreign aid.
This has just been a horrendous development in the HIV response community across the continent.
That's because the U.S. provides almost 60% of international funding for the global HIV response. More than 2 decades ago, a move by former U.S. President George W. Bush changed the course of the African crisis with HIV/AIDS. The president's emergency plan for AIDS relief, or PEPFAR, invested billions to bring testing and treatment to a continent being decimated by the disease.
This was a great thing for the world and certainly for U.S. national security interests and American interests around the world.
It's why President Donald Trump reauthorized PEPFAR during his first term. And the new U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, issued a waiver for PEPFAR funding to continue during the country's foreign aid pause. But PEPFAR's close ties with USAID has meant confusion and chaos, with reports of treatment disruptions and layoffs across the continent.
To rattle, shake, or even break this global health supply chain just puts the program into deep peril.
Other aid agencies like Canada's Stephen Lewis Foundation are now rallying to provide stability. But doing so, it says, will require a lot more support.
We are in a crisis at this moment. People's lives are at stake.
According to UNAIDS, if the $1 billion in U.S. funding annually ends without somehow being replaced, the number of people at risk could be 6 million or more worldwide. Heather Yurex, West Global News, Calgary.
Eyeing the Arctic still ahead, what's really behind the U.S. president's push to take over Greenland? Canada isn't the only country that Donald Trump is threatening. He also says he wants to purchase Greenland, a sovereign island that officially belongs to Denmark. Trump cites national security, pointing to inroads by Russia and China in the Arctic. But as Eric Sorensen reports, as Americans ramp up their rhetoric, the Danes are hitting back.
Greenland is becoming less frozen, less remote, and as a result, more economically and strategically valuable.
We'll see what happens.
It seemed fanciful when Donald Trump suggested buying Greenland 5 years ago, but it's clear now he's serious.
We need Greenland for national security purposes.
One Danish member of the European Parliament responded undiplomatically.
It is not for sale. Let me put it in words you might understand. Mr. Trump, f*** off.
American interest in Greenland isn't new. After World War II, President Harry Truman wanted to buy the island from the Danes with gold. And during the Cold War, a major U.S. military base was established.
A graphic picture of preparedness on the frigid top of the world.
Today, Greenland's 56,000 residents have the right to seek independence, but haven't done so. Enter Donald Trump to stir things up.
People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up.
Greenland has been a part of Denmark for hundreds of years. But President Trump sees new urgency for the U.S. to expand into the Arctic as it opens up from climate change, the economic potential from more shipping in the north, natural resources, minerals and oil to be exploited, and the geopolitical need to counter Russia as well as China from gaining greater influence on North America's Arctic doorstep. Denmark has those concerns too. It just announced $2 billion for more Arctic defense spending. But a new worry is Trump. The Danish Prime Minister shuttled between European capitals recently looking for support. Germany's Olaf Scholz with a message that seemed directed at the U.S. president. Borders must not be moved, he said. Greenland's Prime Minister has his own message. We don't want to be Danes. We don't want to be Americans. We want to be Greenlandic. This week, he called for new elections next month to deal in part with American threats. Like Canada, Denmark, and by extension Greenland, must navigate a potential crisis not of their making.
This time you really need to accommodate the American wishes, but we don't know what the Americans and what Trump really want, and that is what's making this crisis so extremely difficult.
If Donald Trump insists on territorial expansion in the Arctic, the question is, what powers will he use to get what he wants? Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Up next, Canada. The novel ways Canadian businesses are pushing back against Trump's tariff threats. While some Canadian bars are refusing to show the Super Bowl tonight to protest the Trump administration's insults, taunts, and threats, many Canadians are now rethinking their relationship with our longtime friend and ally to the south, and businesses are finding new ways to promote Canadian products, services, and culture. Taria Isri reports.
It's Super Bowl Sunday, but not at this bar in Montreal. The Dieu du Ciel pub is pulling the plug on the most American sporting event there is. With the Trump administration bullying us, says founder Jean-François Gravel, it just didn't feel right to show the game. One of the many acts of protest against what's been called a betrayal, even an attack.
At the end of the day, many people are saying we don't want to be American.
A red and white surge is sweeping the country, including in Quebec, where recent polls in that province show Canadian pride is on the rise.
If we, I would say, accelerate the division between us, between cities, between provinces, between ideas, we won't succeed at all.
Families are also uniting.
Like your mother told you.
A mother-son duo in Calgary built this Buy Canadian app.
Let's try it. Oh, okay. So you can see it's giving us some brand details.
We're encountering opposition from the U.S. that we've never maybe experienced ever before, in modern time. And I think it's, an interesting opportunity to see what we can do differently.
Buying Canadian also includes flying Canadian.
Beyond the tariffs, I think what's really hitting Canadians on an emotional level to make these type of decisions to cancel or rearrange their plans is the 51st state comment.
We're Team Canada.
Jody Hawes canceled an Alaskan cruise.
We'd already put our deposits down, so we lost those. Those were non-refundable. But, we want to support Canada.
Threats do force people to think about the country, about who they are, what's important to them.
An existential challenge, forcing the country to look inwards. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is Hunter Island in British Columbia. We love seeing your Canada, so please keep emailing your photos to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Donna will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great night.